Hello, everyone. I just wanted to do a little video on the philosophy of freedom again, and this is really going to be as an aid to anyone who is studying the book. If you haven't read the book, the video is probably not appropriate. The book that I've always read has been the Michael Wilson translation, and as much as I love the translation, and Michael Wilson goes into a lot of depth with regards to the different terms that are being translated and the broader context of Steiner's philosophy. There are a couple of one particular instance where I find the translation lacking, and I wanted to go into that because this particular point in the translation, which I find lacking, always struck me as being as coming across quite vague, and Steiner's writing is so specific and clear, and Steiner endeavors throughout the book to avoid ambiguous meanings which are vague and vagaries. And so to discover this one little line in the philosophy of freedom which just didn't sit very well with me. It sort of left everything open and vague and felt sort of mystical almost. I thought it's not quite characteristic. And it wasn't until I read the original German text, as best I can. I'm not a native German speaker, but it wasn't until I read the original German text that I discovered, oh my goodness, this line that is in the Michael Wilson translation doesn't even correspond to the German. So I wanted to go into that in this video a little bit. But of course, before I do that, I just need to very quickly recapitulate the essential argument and the essential arc that the book is taking. Steiner is, as we know, very inspired and influenced by Goethe. And Goethe came to an understanding of the world which was very unique and probably at odds with how his contemporaries thought of things. Goethe sees the world as being a manifestation of archetypal principles. So for Goethe, he was able to see that there is an archetypal principle that is expressing itself in all forms of plant life, no matter what plant species it is an expression of this archetypal principle. And Goethe was able to intuit this archetypal principle in his mind in the form of the archetypal plant. And this can be extended to animals as well and human beings, but Goethe stops a little bit short with the human being and can't quite take it all the way and discover the human being's archetypal principle. And I believe what Steiner is doing in the philosophy of freedom is picking up where Goethe left off. And Steiner is ultimately asking, what is the human being's archetypal principle? What is the archetypal principle expressing itself in each individual human being? Just as there's an archetypal principle expressing itself in a plant or an animal, so there must also be an archetypal principle expressing itself in the human being. Now, there are many archetypal principles that are expressing themselves in any particular human being. There is the physical, biological principles, obviously, to our physical form, and some of our activities are biological. But then there are other archetypes, such as our culture, which we are acting out. So we are defined by our cultural archetypes as well as biological archetypes. We're also defined by our own idiosyncrasies, how no one else's life is particular to our own. So we've all got our characteristic traits, which we've inherited, which is a sort of a mix between our inheritance and our environment and our upbringing. But Steiner says, yes, there are all these archetypes, but we don't completely have the full archetypal picture of the human being. And why is that the case? Because we're not taking into account, in all these examples, the fact that the human being is graced with the activity of thinking. Why is the activity of thinking so special? Well, because, as Goethe demonstrates, the activity of thinking is that which combines, which intuits the archetypal principle defining the whatever manifestation we're looking at. So it's the human being's thinking that can intuit the archetypal plant. It's the human being's thinking that can intuit the archetypal species of animal. Therefore, we have to include within the archetypal human being this capacity for the individual to think. Because this thinking activity transcends the realm of archetype and the manifestation of the being. Now, if thinking transcends this realm, thinking is free from the bondage of these two things. The plant doesn't have the freedom to express itself in any other archetype but its own archetype. And the same goes for the animal. The animal can't entertain ideas before acting them out. The animal acts out the ideas of its own archetype. Whereas the human being can entertain an idea before immediately acting it out. Therefore, there's a space that has been opened between idea and action that doesn't exist anywhere else in nature. And the space is created by virtue of our capacity to think, by the fact that we're graced with the activity of thinking. And so to then finally give a archetypal principle to the human being, this archetypal principle has to be the concept of the free spirit. Because within this space, the activity of thinking manifests freely. It determines itself, it's self-determining. And it self-determines within the individual human being. So Steiner says we can't think out fully the human being without including as his or her ultimate archetypal principle the concept of the free spirit. At the same time, we can say, just as the plant's own concept, the plant's own concept is the archetypal plant, and the animal's own concept is the archetypal lion, or whatever, the human being's own archetypal principle is the concept of the free spirit. That is the human being's own concept. And in the German, that's exactly what we read. Now, I have to apologize to those who don't speak German, because I'm going to read in German. And I also have to apologize to those who do speak German for my bad pronunciation. Begriff und Wahrnehmung decken sich hier nur, wenn sie der Mensch selbst zur Deckung bringt. Er kann es aber nur, wenn den Begriff des freien Geistes, das ist sein eigener Begriff, gefunden hat. So, concept and percept, or archetype and manifest activity, only come together in the human being when the human being himself or herself brings them together. But the human being can only do this when he or she has discovered the concept of the free spirit, which is his or her own concept. It's the human being's own concept. So that's as best as I can do with a translation of that. Michael Wilson's translation goes somewhat differently. He says, man must unite his concept with the percept of man by his own activity. Concept and percept coincide in this case only if man himself makes them coincide. This he can do only if he has found the concept of the free spirit. That is, and here's the point which I have contention, if he has found the concept of his own self. That's not the same thing. Steiner says, this he can only do if he has found the concept of the free spirit, that is, his own concept. And Michael Wilson says, This he can do only if he has found the concept of the free spirit. That is, if he has found the concept of his own self. Now, the concept of myself is precisely the thing that is in contention. Because as Steiner is pointing out, we all have concepts of what our self is. But for Steiner, well, Steiner's point is that the ultimate concept of myself is the concept of the free spirit. So to then say the concept of the free spirit is the concept of my own self is kind of just to fall back again to the first place, and to go back to the beginning. Plus it's a vague, what is a concept of myself? It's quite vague and mystical. Whereas Steiner, I believe, is being very specific and articulate. He's saying the human being can discover and have an intuition of his or her own free spirit. And at that moment, he or she has united the archetypal principle of the free spirit with their own manifest actual activity or being. And it happens to be the case that that is the ultimate archetypal principle of the human being. That is the human being's own concept. It's not a concept of the self, although of course you can see that the self, one's self, is intimately involved in it. So if I were to recommend this book, I would say definitely this translation, Michael Wilson's translation, is one that I enjoy and love, and the one that I use. But I would cross out that little line saying, if he has found the concept of his own self, and I would replace it with, the free spirit is the human being's own concept. Or I would say, this man can do only if he has found the concept of the free spirit, which is the human being's own concept. Okay, I hope that's been helpful and interesting. Thanks for watching.